Hello and welcome to Teacher Talk, the podcast for teachers who are lifers but still want to have a life. This is Jared, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, Johanna. Hey, Johanna.
Hi, Jared.
What are we going to talk about today?
Teaching is hard.
We've talked about that.
No, but I mean, it's like really hard.
Well, you did all the things that we talked about before, and now it's easy, right?
I think that teaching is, and teaching problems are a lot like cancer.
Oh, that's a good start.
Yeah, you can do a lot to reduce the damage, but it is so easy to not get it all. No matter how much you plan, no matter how much you think through, no matter how many connections you make, something will get missed, and then it will slowly over time grow into a problem.
Yeah, well, your analogy sounds like you're treating cancer, but really it's like getting cancer.
Oh.
Because the reason we get cancer is that there's like a super billion number of cells in your body.
Okay.
And we have really high accuracy mechanisms to make sure that they, A, don't get cancer, and B, if they do, the body kills the cells itself right away before it grows. But eventually, even though 99.9999% of the time everything is working exactly like it's supposed to, there's just too many that eventually a problem starts, and then it grows past its ability to be controlled. That's why tall people get cancer more than short people.
Really?
Because there's more of them. So each cell you have is an opportunity to go wrong. And
so that's why, like, in my family, no one gets cancer, but in your family, like, everyone gets cancer.
That's maybe oversimplifying it, but just, yeah, by being taller, there's more chances to go wrong because there's more cells.
I've already learned so much. We could just stop the podcast.
Cancer. Welcome to Oncology Talk, the podcast for people who have a life-threatening illness but don't want to have it for their whole life. I think that I can connect the analogy that, like, you've set up your systems to make sure that the class is going to run smoothly, and, you know, eventually something will fail. There's just too many opportunities with the inputs to the kids at home and to the kids at school, to the kids in other class, that even if you're perfect...
To you as a person.
Even to you.
Yes.
Even if you're perfect, which you're not going to be...
I want to be perfect.
But even if you were, problems will still develop within the framework of the classroom that you've set up.
They will. And I have had years where I really build the tower high because problems don't develop. But as a general truth, the longer you teach, the more likely you are to have those years where you do everything that's worked in the past, or you've done everything to modify so that you can create success. And it just, a lot works, but it's not perfect.
So what are the signs of things not being perfect? What are you looking for at this point?
All of a sudden, you'll notice you start using your behavior management plan a lot more. So
this is, you know, into the school year. A lot of the stuff we talked about in previous episodes is beginning of the school. This is your plan to implement and set up the classroom to work the way you want.
Everything's set up. Everything, for the most part, has shown that it is effective. We're not talking, I mean, a big question teachers need to ask themselves is, has it never worked, or is it not working right now? And there tends to be really good time cues. If you find that you're hitting illness and so subs are coming into your room more, then you can probably anticipate that in the week following that, you're going to have kind of a breakdown. Times just before break, times just after break.
Yeah, by breakdown, you mean like one student's going to test the discipline or
no, it will all of a sudden feel like nothing's working. It can feel very hopeless. because you can chalk one day up to a bad day, but you'll start to notice this pattern as the problems kind of grow and manifest. So phase 1 is to really ask yourself, has it never worked, or is it just not working right now?
Okay, has it never worked, or is it just not working right now?
Okay, we're going to go with it's just not working right now, because that's a whole nother podcast if it's never worked.
So you set things up and things were going really well.
Yeah.
Everything's humming along.
You maybe had some bumps in the road, but nothing that actually caused mechanical breakdown.
And now you're frustrated on how the last day or two have been, and you're reflecting and say, well, it was working much better than this with the same me and the same students. So it's gotten worse somehow. What?
Right, and by worse, I generally mean it's gotten a lot worse.
A lot worse.
Yeah, like it kind of I feel is like a switch. You'll be like, what happened? And you'll be looking for a reason. And there are ways that as teachers we can take this to make it worse. And then there are things that we can do to really stop the problem in its tracks and make it better.
I don't feel like I have a good grasp on what this switch looks like.
All of a sudden, kids go from sometimes needing the peace corner, sometimes filling out a reflection, to, for me, I would call it level 4 behavior plans. I am reassessing everything I'm doing. All of a sudden, it goes from one student having a bad moment to now 3 students all at once are having a bad moment. It's things that cause learning to stop.
Okay.
And not like a hiccup happened once, but it's starting to be a trend that learning is stopping in your classroom for one reason or another. And it might be some of the hardest challenges is when it's the same student causing the learning to stop, because we can often think that what we should do is just focus on that student, and that isn't going to solve your problem.
We have cancer and there's a train wreck. That sounds really bad.
Yes, it feels really bad. It feels really bad.
So what do we do about our cancerous train wreck?
Okay, so step 1 is to slow down. Okay, we've acknowledged that it has worked. It's just not working right now. And even if you feel like if I got rid of this one student, everything would be fine, that is going to exacerbate your problem. Because you need to instead slow down and be willing to restart over with day 1 learning.
Okay, so with the whole class, not the...
With the whole class.
And why?
Because your behavior management plan should be something that you use periodically. Behaviors that struggle should be logical and sequential. If you're having all of a sudden pockets of students needing to use the behavior management plan all at once, or you're having a consistent need to use the behavior management plan, something else is broken. And you need to figure out what that is. And the easiest way to figure out what that is to start over with day 1 style activities and teacher interaction with students. That super positivity, that everything we talked about in that podcast. It's like, how do you do day 1? That you have to do that over.
Like when we mess up the Lego building and you get to a point, it's like, the piece is gone and it's now fitting together.
Right.
Sometimes the most effective way to diagnose what went wrong with the Lego building is to just go through the steps from step 1 again.
Start over. And the hardest part of starting over is that you as a teacher can't make starting over a negative experience. Because you feel frustration. You don't want to be
the kids.
For you need to become.
Because you just had a train wreck that gave you cancer.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a negative experience, but you're pretending it's not negative for the students.
Yeah, you have to go back to that version of you that just had 2 months of summer and is hopeful and excited, and you're meeting the kids for the first time, and you know that kids are going to come into the system anxious. Your problem is that you have anxiety in your classroom, and it is festering. And so we got to figure out what is causing that anxiety. And it won't work to do a classroom reset if the classroom reset is you like lecturing the kids about how we're having to go back to day one. You have to find that happiness inside your soul or fake it. And you have to do everything we talked about for a day one day on day 45 or day 60, right? Start over.
It's like I called IT tech support for my cancer train wreck, and they're like, well, have you tried restarting it?
And jiggling the cords.
Well, that doesn't fit, but...
Oh, we used to get told that.
Well, yeah, but...
Our tech support wouldn't come up unless we turned the computer on and off and jiggled the cords.
What's the jiggling the cords part of this analogy, though?
Making sure that there's power and connection. I don't know.
So the restart part...
Okay.
Makes sense. That's why I said it.
Stay in our zone.
Okay.
Lanes. I don't provide analogies.
I'll handle the analogies.
Okay. So.
We're restarting and we're...
Restarting.
We're recreating day one, fresh white powder.
Yes.
Everything is hopeful.
You know nothing about the kid. Like, you kind of have to totally restart yourself, which is the hardest part. Kids will sense it. If you do it right, they are little sponges. They will sense the reset, and it might take them 10 minutes to get on board with you, but they will do it too.
Now, this has to go faster than it did the first time, or I'm in real trouble, right? Of course, I guess I was in real trouble anyway, but...
You're doing this because you have a pattern that shows that this isn't an isolated incident, that something is wrong in the class. You're going back to day one. Day one activities, day two, day three are all diagnostic activities where you seek out and try and figure out what is needed to make learning happen in your classroom. And it doesn't mean that you can't do learning activities with a day one reset, but I would structure more about review. You're rebuilding that sense of safety, security, success in the classroom space.
So you're going to do a pretest again or
no,
pre-assessment?
But
you're going to go through the behavior management plan?
You're going to reteach everything, but you're not at any point going to make it a negative experience. You're not going to talk about how we're needing to do a review. You're just going to pretend like it's day one again. I mean, what did you do? You had a clean, organized classroom. You had new seats. You had activities that caused kids to work together as teams. You had activities that caused kids to be independent. You had activities that caused kids to regroup and see you as a leader and a support structure. I mean, all of that. Basically, just go back to that podcast that talks about day one, day two, day three. You're restarting.
I have another analogy.
Okay.
Is the train went off the tracks in the curve. So you pick up the train, because it's a model train probably.
Oh, okay.
And put it back on the straight part.
Yes.
Where it's much more clear how to get it on.
Oh, yes, that's what you're doing.
And then it can go again.
Yes.
Okay.
And if there is a genuine problem, if there is a student in need of support or resources, or you're doing something that's causing issues for students, you're going to find it in that reset in a way that allows you to get information that will correct the problem rather than exacerbate the problem. Okay, so next thing. This is the hardest part, is you have to avoid blame. And I don't just mean you as a teacher blaming students or you causing blame. I mean you need to avoid blame from anyone, anything. At this point, you are probably dealing with a situation where maybe parents are blaming you, maybe administration's blaming you, maybe other teachers are dishing out blame. Maybe it's not being directed at you, maybe it's being directed at a student or a parent. Or when things go off the rails, people like to figure out whose fault it is. And you can't solve a problem if what you're doing is blaming. And so people who are blaming can't solve your problem either. So you have to avoid
makes sense.
all of that.
When something goes wrong, to try to figure out exactly what went wrong so that you can fix it or avoid it. But that's not always the best way, because it's like the Lego thing again. Like, you could like work your way backwards through the instructions or look for whatever extra piece you have and try and diagnose what went wrong with the build. But guess what? That's going to be a ton more work and probably not as likely to produce a successful outcome as just going through the steps again. You're advocating we're not trying to diagnose, we're just trying to reset and let it take care of itself.
Well, I would say it's not like your Lego problem at all, because theoretically in your Lego problem, you're going to find that one piece that made all of this happen. And I don't think that's true. You're dealing with human beings. You're dealing with students who are human beings, and then they have a network of human beings that they interact with, and then you're a human being, and you have a network, and then there's this whole... I mean, there is no way you can definitively say what caused the train to derail. Mm-hmm. And finding that cause doesn't put the train back on the tracks. It is... All it does is isolate people, whether they're students, whether they're parents, whether they're teachers, whether they're administrators, and that isolation causes an, I still can't say that word, exacerbation, say it.
Exacerbate?
Exacerbation.
There you go.
Of the problem. So, as a teacher, that negativity can prevent you from having a successful day one reset. So you got to stay away. Whoever's doing it, you got to stay away from it. Even if that means, and this is the hard part, phone call 5 home where you have a blame situation set up with a parent, which should never exist, but sometimes they happen. All that's going to do is continue to cause the problem. So for this small period of time, you might have to shut down communication in order to solution find and solve.
Okay.
All right. Number 3, assume that everyone wants the same thing. The biggest mistake I think that we make in education is that we forget that all of us actually have the same goal. We want learning to happen. We want successful learning experiences.
The kids don't, but...
Yes, they do.
Okay.
It is built in us, the want to learn. They might want it to be easy. They might want it to be stress-free. They might want it to mean that they can also interact with their peers while they do it. But we might disagree on the degree, but we all want...
All things being equal, they do actually want to learn.
All students want success. People want to be successful. We all want the same thing. And we can oftentimes in education build camps where we think we are fighting each other because they want something different, because we pay attention to how they're trying to create success rather than paying attention to the fact that the goal of success is the same.
Okay, and then what does this help you with then? Once you assume everyone wants the same goal?
When you're in those situations where blame allocation is, you're having a meeting where, quite frankly, the goal of the meeting is to allocate blame. Mm-hmm. You might not be able to change the fact that that is the purpose of the meeting, but you can change the fact that what comes out of your mouth is not blame and trying to put everybody back on the same page, which is to say, we all want success. I want my students to be successful. You want a successful school. You want your child to have a successful future. You as a student want, if you focus on that commonality, it can help bring others to your side of working as a team. It doesn't always work, but it's kind of your only option.
That makes sense.
Then the last little component, and this would be true with whether they're adults or kids, increase activities that cause physical closeness, calmness, and repetitive tasks.
Not recess. That's not calm. They're close and physical.
But they're not necessarily close. So like if I am interacting with a teacher and we have very different opinions about what to do to help a student be successful, I can change from a blame conversation to a team conversation by just physically getting closer. Now, I am short and I am physically unassuming. So if I was taller, I would have to be very strategic about how I did this, whether it be to invite them to come sit at a table with me and we physically have our chairs closer together. Same with students. When I want a student to be like, when we're struggling to be on the same team, I have to get lower and then I have to invite the student into the space, right? I can't physically intimidate the student. I can't go into their space, but I have to encourage them into my space. I have to encourage things like, do you want to hold my hand? Fist bumps. Can you pass me that paper? Can you pass me that pencil? Things that cause physical closeness, I find. And then when you're in that physical closeness, don't react right away. Take a break and just like start a sentence and then wait to finish it. So there's that moment that's like a pause where you're just physically close. I don't know why this works, but I will tell you this works. You look at me like I'm crazy.
I mean, it makes a sort of sense.
Okay.
I'll have to try it and see.
I'm telling you what works.
Okay.
It also works if you have your students do it. So let's say I have a class where it's not like one kiddo. It's like they're all fighting amongst each other, right? It is just a hotbed of emotional fighting. Do that day one reset, but they incorporate games that cause them to have to exchange something, right? Cause them to be in situations where they have a purpose to be physically near each other.
Go fish.
Yeah, card games are not a bad solution, but then there's a winner and a loser.
Oh.
I would instead incorporate games that create team winning solutions. Secondary, I really liked the string or rope. I'd get a long piece of rope and then you randomly hand it to kids so it turns into this big web and then they have to like turn themselves into a straight line.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Elementary students, I like games where each of them are a piece of a puzzle. So they have so for example, let's say I give every kid a card and on that card it is a color and a number. And I want them to get themselves in rainbow order. But then let's say you and I are all reds, but I'm red 1 and you're red 2. So then we have to compare our cards and I would stand next to you. And then I would say like you all have to fit in a line in this space. And then the whole point of the activity is no one can talk. And if they talk, then you're like, oh no! And you take all the card back and you hand out the cards. So they do it again. Because it causes and then you purposely write really small on the card. So I have to get physically close to you to read your card because I can't talk my card. There's something about that causes us to like that, tribal, I don't know. It calms us all down and it causes us to work as a team.
Yeah. I mean, something about being uncertain of the interaction and like everyone starts looking to everyone else for clues on how to act, and it all kind of just diffuses, I think.
Yes. It can be harder to figure out how to do that stuff with parents. I think the easiest way to do it with parents is to don't make copies for everyone. If you are having a meeting with a parent, make one copy that you both need to write on for some reason. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that you should create a situation where you and a parent are alone in a room, right? You might have other adults as a part of the team, but you and that parent have to physically sit close together because you're going to write on the same. This is the real copy
and we're going to share it. That's clever.
I have taken some situations that parents were very angry at me. And I think it's hardest in the secondary level. You have a much more isolated experience with parents. And I have been able to tap that down by just having a 20-minute meeting where we were physically just close together. I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe someone's going to listen to this advice and then get punched. Maybe I should.
Well, I mean, something bad was probably going to happen anyway then.
Oh, I don't know if that should be the advice. But anyway, maybe it is recap time.
Okay, I think the main message here is you are not fixing the space shuttle. You are not looking for the O-ring that was too cold for the launch conditions, and that caused a leak, which caused an explosion.
Is this what happened on what is that?
On the Challenger?
Challenger, that's what I was
So
gonna say.
they had a big investigation, and a
Yeah.
famous physicist led the congressional, and they found it. They did it. It's like, this is exactly what went wrong.
Yeah, we're not doing
really
that.
quite sure, because it's probably not going to be a thing. Like, people are in relationships are too complex for that. You're never going to find the one thing that if I fix this, it'll be better.
Right.
And then B, even if you do find the one thing that's wrong, which doesn't exist, but if you think you do, it doesn't put the train back on the track anyway.
No.
So there's really no
nothing.
sense in blame, and not just in like a hippie and like, we're not, there's no blame here, man. Really, there's no blame when used purposefully is to like find that O-ring, is to say, this is what went wrong, we'll fix it, and then it won't happen again. We don't have to feel bad. Blame doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing, but when there isn't a piece to find, throwing around blame just gets in the way of it.
And it causes isolation, which causes further prevention of solution finding.
So really your strategies here are largely to get away from people blaming each other or you blaming yourself.
Right.
And so you're going to slow down, restart, pick the train up, put it back on the straight part of the track, and engage your day one activities without acting like it's a punishment or a problem.
Right.
Then you're not going to, like we just talked about specifically, you're not going to try and blame anyone to bring them on board or to correct a problem. No, just execute the back on the track plan.
Yep. Okay, I think that's it.
No, this is the last step.
Oh, the last step.
Which is the closeness.
Yes.
Get the kids closer with a physical activity where they don't compete really, but they have to share things or look at things together.
Mm-hmm.
You could do the same thing with parents by having a shared paper.
Correct.
That you have to set close to each other in order to each write on. And that's, for whatever reason, that makes it hard for people to keep being mad at each other in a way that will help diffuse that blame situation.
Yes, your words don't often work to prevent blame, but physical closeness can help put you back onto solution finding.
All right.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you, Johanna. Teacher Talk, the podcast for teachers who are lifers but still want to have a life.